Joining me now for reaction, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, along with Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt. Congressman, I'll go to you first. This is just contributing to the growing perception in America that there are two sets of rules for the bow tie wearing elites and for everyone else. I mean, this can't possibly be received well. We're reading Hunter Biden's own text. It's not like we made this up.
Yeah, Dan, there are a number of really serious concerns that are raised when you read that Politico article. Frankly, it mentions multiple potential violations of federal law, not the least of which, as you mentioned, if he lied about drug use on the federal form, but also just throwing a gun in the trash can. If you read the article about some of the conversations he had with police, it almost sounds like he was getting testy with police because they were asking him basic questions. There were slurs that were made about people here from Mexico. I mean, a lot of things in that police report that are very alarming. But again, you've got President Biden right now talking about passing more gun control, making it harder for law-abiding citizens to get a gun. And yet here you have a case of his son who, from all appearances, broke multiple laws and gets off scot-free. And like you said, what does the Secret Service even have to do with this? Joe Biden wasn't vice president. He didn't even have Secret Service protection at the time. And yet the Secret Service went and tried to pull the gun records from the gun store. Luckily, the gun owner didn't give those records over to him. But again, what are they doing trying to get those records? A lot of serious questions that ought to be raised. But we shouldn't be passing gun control to make it harder for law-abiding citizens. Stop people who break the law from getting away with it scot-free.
Yeah, I mean, the irony here is so thick. It's impossible to ignore, Charlie. And one other component to this. You know, Charlie, if this was a story, forget about Don Jr., if this was a story about Don Jr.'s cousin's friend's neighbor, and Don had a hot dog at his house 30 years ago, this would be a front page story everywhere all over the cosmos. And yet, because it's a story about Hunter Biden, it'll receive a light touch everywhere.
No, the massive cover-up for the Bidens is something that we've never witnessed before in modern American politics. It's just appalling. And by the way, I know a lot of gun owners. All three of us, we all know lots of gun owners. I don't know anybody who would, first of all, throw a weapon away in a trash can in a high-trafficked area like that. In the first place. In the second place, I don't know anybody who would ever lie on one of those forms. And the fact that you have, clear questions about whether Hunter Biden did lie on those forms raises all kinds of very important questions that obviously need to be answered. But of course, the most appalling part of all of it is the fact that here we are at a time where, as you point out, Joe Biden and Democrats are talking, unlike they've talked ever before, about going after law-abiding gun owners and making it harder for law-abiding gun owners who would never do any of these things to prevent them and to curtail their abilities to protect themselves, protect their families, and to protect their neighbors. But this is just the way apparently the way the Bidens roll, and it's disgusting, and we have to get to the bottom of it. And I think a big reason why politicians often do this sort of thing, they go for the shiny object and try to come up with new rules that they want to go after, is because it's an admission that they have failed to enforce all of the laws that are currently on the books, and that's usually how bad things wind up happening.
Yeah, good point, Charlie. Congressman, is there any appetite whatsoever on the Hill to investigate this family anymore? I mean, how much is this guy going to get away with? Talking about Hunter, I mean, the accusations here are the stuff of almost legend. Payoffs from Russian oligarchs. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, again, if it involved anyone even close to the Trump orbit, it would be a cosmic scandal from like an Avengers movie. Is there any appetite to investigate here?
Yeah, Dan, and you can see there's already requests being made for this to be investigated. I'm waiting for the Biden Justice Department to investigate. But again, if you replaced the words Biden with Trump, and then you read that article, the Politico article that really goes into detail about the police report, alarming questions all throughout, if that was Trump instead of Biden, every newspaper in the country would be all over it. It would be the lead story on all of the mainstream media outlets, and yet crickets, like everything else. But people are watching this. it's like the double standard you see with so many of these Democrat officials who break the rules. They tell you to live by one set of rules. They're living by another. They're trying to take away your freedoms when they're not even complying. They're trying to take away our gun rights as we speak in Washington. And the president of the United States himself is talking about going nuclear and blowing up the filibuster in the Senate to get gun control and make it harder for you to get a gun. And yet his own son looks like violated multiple laws. Why don't you enforce the laws that are on the books instead of going after people who aren't breaking the laws, like Hurt said?
Yeah. Well, Congressman, thanks. Please follow up on that. I mean, really, America needs accountability here. So we really appreciate it. Charlie, Congressman, thanks a lot.
Absolutely.